Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody who's joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X, or watching in the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television. We thank you for joining us today. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, doing well. Good to see you today. How's everything down there?
Everything's great. Everything's great. Just just having busy weeks, but it's always good to get a lot of work done.
Very good, very good. Hey, the only thing I have coming up this weekend, I'll be traveling to Salt Lake City to speak. And once again, this is a pre-recorded show for those of you who are watching. Just be aware of that. We'll be back live we may not be live next week. We'll let you know about that, but we're not live today.
Yeah, this is pre-recorded, but we definitely we'll look forward to everybody when we are live. When we'll let people know about that.
Yeah.
So again, good to see you again, Mike. We'll go ahead and bring in our guest who we've had on before. We have joining us Gene Nouhan. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, you guys.
Hey, Gene, good to see you. How's everything in your neck of the woods?
Very good. I don't know if I mentioned this the last time, but I'm going to be a grandfather for the first time.
Oh, wow.
That's in September.
Wow. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we're so excited. It's just unbelievable. I've got two older kids that have not given us grandkids yet. So the youngest is getting the job done. Let's put it that way. So that's the big thing. And I'm trying to get my house all renovated enough to sell. We want to move near my daughter and her son, her newborn son, and my son-in-law. So that's what's taking up my time right now.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Now you've been with us before, Gene, and some people are brand new to you who are watching today. If you could just give us a little brief background.
Okay. Let me just say that you're breaking up, Mike. I just want you to know, but I'm catching what you're saying. So, and just in case I don't, be aware that might be the situation. I mentioned the last time, I'll be briefer this time, I think. I grew up in Michigan, a little town called Livonia, not really a town, but a suburb of Detroit. And we were Catholic, so we went to Catholic school for 8 years. And after Catholic school, Vatican II, I'm not going to explain that here, but that caused a problem with a lot of people. And it was starting to with myself and my brother. And so we started studying the Bible and trying to find out, where God is going to lead us. And so we were studying with different groups, and one of them was the Worldwide Church of God, who provides lots of literature, slick-looking, quality literature. And they were touching on subjects that interested us, creation and how God is a designer, and there's design in creation, and that resonated with us. And so we were invited to go to some lectures. I don't know if you were around when lectures were the thing to introduce people, but the lecture series was a sermon or study every day for 2 weeks. And we went to that, and it's all designed to start at the beginning, end at the end, and convince you that the Worldwide Church of God is a true church, basically. And if you agree with that, you set up an appointment to meet with the pastor, the minister, and he'll invite you to church if he thinks you're worthy to come to church. That's what they did back then. Well, they thought we were worthy, apparently, because they invited us. And eventually...
Back in the day, I was never worthy to be invited. So.
I didn't have the heart to tell them that I wasn't worthy. But anyway, we didn't know that that's what they were doing, checking us out to see, should we invite these people or not? And they did. So I only found that out later. I went to Ambassador College, had a double major in theology and speech persuasion, which is how to argue logically and effectively your ideas. And you could probably see how that comes out in the book. that there's a train of thought with every argument that I make, and that's part of the training. And also, I studied with Reasonable Faith with William Lane Craig. He's someone worth looking into.
Mm-hmm.
He understands the existence of God better than anybody on the planet.
Yes.
When I first discovered him 15, 18 years ago, I decided I wanted to get credentialed from him. It was a very rigorous thing to do. The final exam, or the exam you have to take, is 220 essay questions.
Wow.
And I was told that the average person takes 6 months to take the test.
Wow.
Wow.
Test. So it is a very rigorous thing, and I got credentialed from it. I'm not going to tell you how quickly I did it because I might sound like I'm bragging, but I had a background enough to understand most of what I was reading. Not all, but most. And so I taught a class, an apologetics class, with people that had degrees in engineering, theology. Some people in theology had advanced degrees, and science. Some had advanced degrees in science, and some in various other degrees like history and so on. And they were trained in apologetics, and I didn't even know that at the time. So they came to the class. It started out with 17 people. It happened to start at the same time Ken Ham and Bill Nye debates were going on. In fact, it was the same week. And so the pastor, Dr. Law, he wrote one of the reviews, asked me to listen to those debates because it might come up in the class. So I did. It never came up in class, as you probably remember from the book.
Yeah.
After 4 years, it went from 17 people to 70 people in the class. We ended it there. And the pastor was transferred. And so I haven't taught the class. Instead, I went on Facebook and unfortunately talking to some people, but debating other people. And some of the atheist/Christian groups can be very toxic. And so, especially coming from the atheists, they're very rude, obnoxious, and condescending. Once I caught on to what they were doing, then I was able to defend the existence of God and the Bible too. A lot of the Christians appreciated me being in that group or those groups, but I stopped doing it because it's not a healthy environment at all.
Yeah.
So I had to stop doing that. So instead, I'm in groups where there's more common and fighting is not allowed. And they're more educated in science and biblical scholarship and theology. And I just feel more at home there. And so I'm there to persuade, along the lines of what Reasonable Faith taught me. And it's been very effective. And I'm reaching thousands of people doing that instead of several dozen people. And at any rate, the apologetics class and Ken Ham and what's going on here in Cincinnati, where Ken Ham is, motivated me to write a book. There was too much conflict going on. And I thought, this is a pretty simple subject. Of course, I didn't treat it like a simple subject, as you can tell. It still is a pretty simple subject. But I thought, I'm going to write this book. I can do this. So I did. It took me 6 years. It should have only taken me 4, because it probably could be 100 pages shorter. In fact, I'm working on a second edition that's going to be shorter and trimmed up some of the more dense stuff that's in the book. But I don't know when, if ever, that will come out. But I don't know, probably went too far already, giving you a background of myself. So
I remember the debate between Bill Nye and Ken Ham. And as a Christian, I remember watching it, thinking to myself, Bill Nye is winning this debate.
Unfortunately,
and it felt kind of like I don't really like the fact that he's winning the debate. But Kim Han had some really.
My class wasn't even interested in it. They didn't even watch it, or if they did, they didn't care about it. But in my wife's office of some like 85 people, there were people that were outraged at Bill Nye. And don't you know the Earth is 6,000 years old? And one lady that works closely with my wife said to her, "You can't be a Christian unless you understand Genesis literally." And that shocked my wife. It shocked me too. But to be honest with you, most young earthers would not say that. Even even the more extreme, they come close to saying that, but they don't come right out and say, you're not a Christian. They just say you're a compromised Christian, that you almost reject the gospel, but not quite. So they get pretty close to doing that, but that's all part of the rhetoric, really. So I take some of that to task in the book. I'm addressing the extremists, not the average person who reads it literally, and that's how they understand it. The church, Christianity, has always allowed a literal understanding of the 6 days and a figurative understanding without judgment upon your faith. And the Reform movement says you're a compromised Christian if you think it's figurative.
Would you call Ken Ham an extremist?
Ken Ham?
Yeah, would you call him an extremist?
Ken Ham?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's one of those that says if the earth is old, God's a liar. Because he thinks God wrote Genesis and he meant it literally. He also says a similar thing about Jesus. He said Jesus' honesty is at stake here.
Wow.
Yeah. This is something that I'm hearing more about even within our church. You're getting people who are familiar with young Earth. We've definitely got the old Earthers too, and so I think it's very apropos to address this issue. And you've been on once already, Gene. And for those who didn't see that program, can you give a little synopsis of where we've been?
Sure.
And then you can get into where we're going today.
Yeah. Well, let me take one half step back and finish a thought that I ended with, having to do with the three-tiered universe. Can I do that now? Or
Sure.
Yeah. You would put that up on the screen?
You guys are still, you're not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, you're definitely chopping up, and right now okay, you just moved. Yeah, let's put it on the screen because I'll try to be as brief as possible. God help me. I'm not seeing it. You guys are still now. Mike's still. Mike is definitely breaking up. I think
I think it may be Gene's connection, Mike, because I see you and him really well.
Okay. Yeah. Can you see it now, Gene?
No, I can see all of you crystal clear. In fact, it's better than last time. And I'm more clear than last time. I can see you. What you're doing is breaking up.
Okay.
In other words, there's glitches in your sentences and you're stopping. You're physically frozen there for a while. Like right now, you're frozen.
Yeah, I think it may be your connection on your end, like your download or something coming from it. Because I'm running the program, and you're coming across pretty good, and Mike's coming across perfect, and everything looks perfect on this end here. So this may be your something on your end. Boy,
I don't know what that would be.
That's okay. Can you see the picture right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you increase the size a little bit, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Okay, last time, I'll preface what I was saying the last time. I said one of the important principles in understanding Genesis is the nature of God. He's omnipresent. And when you read the first chapter of Genesis, God is influenced by the setting of the sun and the rising of the sun. He begins his day at sunrise and he ends it at sunset. And the only way that can be is if he's in a body in a particular location on the earth. And God is not in a body like that. He's omnipresent. He sees all things at once. And so the other way he could be affected by sunrise and sundown is if it's a three-tiered universe, which the language of Genesis and the rest of the Bible supports, although most people aren't aware of this. So here's what a three-tiered universe looks like. And you can go on Wikipedia and look up biblical cosmology, and you'll learn about this there. Notice at the top, it says God, the heaven of heavens. In a three-tiered universe, what you have is you have the earth in the center, and right at the below earth is Sheol, the place of the dead. But right under God at the top, you see this blue band that goes all the way around in a circle. That's the waters above the firmament and the waters below the earth and on the sides of the earth. The ancients looked up in the sky and they saw a marine blue color, and it looked just like water. So they thought it was water, but that it was held up by a firmament that was see-through. It's kind of like, you see that black band that goes around in a dome shape right under the waters?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got at the top, the band of waters, and right holding up the band of waters is this black band in a dome shape. That's the firmament, although it was invisible to the ancients. They could see through it, but you'll notice there's little slots in this firmament. What are those slots for? That's when God releases rain in due season and snow and sleet. They're the doors or the storehouses for those things. And the dome, the invisible firmament holding up the waters is kind of like a bead of water on a leaf. If you've ever noticed a bead of water, it's dome shape. It's dome shape, and it looks like nothing's holding it up, but it is there, right there. And this is a similar idea.
Okay.
Right under the firmament, that black bar is the sky, the entire universe sky with the stars, the sun, the moon, and clouds. And you see this exact depiction throughout the ancient Near East archaeological record. I've seen dozens of these in Egypt, and when I was there, plus other types from Mesopotamia. And the sun and moon and stars are up there. And the important thing about the sun is the sun follows the course of this dome shape. So do the stars and the moon. The stars and the moon come out at night, but the sun is during the day, and it lights up the day, and it goes all the way to the right of that dome-shaped firmament and in the west where it sets. And they thought the sun set and went down into this underworld where the waters below the earth are. And then it would come up through the night. You have the evening, and then the morning would start to come up, and the sun would come up on the east side and light up the whole universe again while it was dark, while it was in the underworld. Now it's lighting up the earth, the earth and the universe, actually. And God starts his day. And this is a typical work day of a Hebrew craftsman, which we'll see in a minute. But this is how God could also be affected by sunrise and sunset. He's sitting above the entire universe. And while the sun's out, he sees the whole thing. And when the sun goes down into the underworld, you just stop working. That's just what you do. That's all. It's not that God couldn't work, but the author is using a Hebrew work week to describe God, the deity of the covenantal deity of Israel. He's the one doing the work, and he's put in a literary device that's a Hebrew work week, showing that it's the Hebrew God. This is one of the things I'm saying in the book. It's not the only reason he's writing it, but it's a big reason.
Okay.
So what I'm suggesting is the reason we can't take the details about the universe literally and about God affected by sunrise and sunset is, one, God is not affected by sunrise and sunset, just period. And two, the universe is not a three-tiered universe.
Yeah.
It just
you know what? You mentioned this. I never thought of this before. Jay, I've never thought of this before. So you mentioned this, that the way we know of the Earth is a globe, and really the sun never ever sets because it's always setting somewhere and is rising somewhere. And if God's observing
they didn't know that back then. And it's okay because the Bible's not teaching a three-tiered universe. Any more than it's teaching your emotions are in your bowels. It doesn't say thou shalt believe your emotions are in your bowels. No, that would be a teaching. It just assumes what they thought of the human body and what they thought of the universe. And they couldn't understand it any other way because all they had were their eyes to look up in the sky. That's all they had. And this is a brilliant explanation for people of that time.
And this shouldn't be surprising because the Bible uses many literary devices, parables, visions, prophecy, history. There's all kinds of things, right?
Very well said, because the Semitic mind works like that. The modern Western mind would only occasionally do something like that. It's in some kind of novel or some kind of special way of communicating something. But in the ancient times, that's the bulk of what they thought. Like, what's really interesting is that I found out since we talked last that the first prose and historical writing ever in human history is the Bible. Most people think it was Herodotus, and no, the best scholarship is saying the Bible. Prior to the Bible, people thought the universe was cyclical, that there wasn't a history in a straight line, that everything came around again, so that you have these mythologies. You don't have prose or history moving forward in the future direction in the other pagan mythologies, because they didn't believe history worked in that direction. They thought history came around and around with the seasons of the year. And the cyclical life cycle where you die, your body goes in the earth, produces more life, and it's all cyclical. God revealed to them that he's a God of history, and he's taking all this to an end time scenario and conclusion. And Israel was the first to understand that. That's why the Bible the Old Testament even, is extremely important for revelation. Now, it's not an equal revelation of the New Testament, but it is equally inspired. And the theme of the Old Testament is God's nature and his plan for mankind that eventually is revealed in Christ. So you can put up the next graphic there, Jeff. I want to quote just Psalm 104. We don't have to do the top part. Psalm 104 describes a Hebrew work week. Psalm 104 also touches on creation, Genesis 1. But to note that it's describing a Hebrew work week when it says in verse 23, when the sun rises in the morning, man goes out to his work and to his labor until the evening. See, that's what's going on in Genesis 1. The Hebrew author is describing God as a Hebrew craftsman because he's the God of Israel, and he's making that plain to not just the people of Israel, but to the nations around him. And so anyway, I wanted to touch on that. And there's a verse, I think the next clip, I don't know if you have that, Jeff, but it describes, I think it's one of the 10 commandments. Yeah, Exodus 20, verse 4. It describes a three-tiered universe. It says, you shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Okay. Well, they thought Leviathan and all kinds of sea monsters were under there. And you learn about that in the Psalms and the book of Job, where that's what they thought, or at least in a mythological way. Maybe not literally, but in a mythological way.
Hey, I have a question, Gene.
Yeah.
So how would Ken Ham or a young Earth creationist, what would they say to this three-tiered
They
universe?
would reject the three-tiered universe outright. That the ancient Israelites knew about the whole universe, maybe not how big it was. I don't think Ken Ham would go that far.
Yeah.
But that the earth was a globe, that's a fact in the young Earth circles. So no, he would reject that outright.
Okay.
See, the problem is, and I did not do this here, the problem is reading your doctrines into the text. I did not do that. I started from scratch. I wanted to begin with the language, what the best scholarship says about that, to try to understand what the author is saying in his time. Regardless of I had no doctrinal preference here. like I say, Christianity has always been free to take it literally or figuratively. That's fine. But I don't have any particular doctrinal stance here. That's not what you do when you write a book like mine. You want to have as little bias as possible. Not that you can eliminate bias altogether, but the way you eliminate most of the bias is having a disciplined process. Every step of the way. You begin with, like I say in the book, you define your terms, you have the first presuppositions, you have premises, and you have conclusions, you have evidence. You should have explanatory power by your conclusions. It should make sense with everything around it and so on. So to interpret Genesis as a young earther is the whole deal in the young earth reform movement. They're not going to get anything else out of it. There would have to be some kind of radical change for them to change their belief on that. Very hard to change something that you're totally emotional with. And like I've said the last time, it suddenly becomes the most important doctrine of all. It's like, if you think the earth is old, you're rejecting the atonement and the cross. What? Where does that come from?
Right.
And the young earth interpretation is foundational.
Can you define for the audience a little bit reformed movement of the young earthers, that particular title
very good
versus just a general young earth?
I make a difference between the young earth creationism as an idea and the reform movement as the radicalization of that idea. They think that if the earth is old, God's a liar. They say this because they think Genesis tells us the earth is old, God wrote that. And for that, I mean, the earth is young, I should say, and that God wrote that. And if now we find out later it's not, then God, they use the word, is a liar. Henry Morris says that. Ken Ham says this. Elizabeth Mitchell says this. I don't know who else. I didn't scour the earth for every single young earther that might say this.
Yeah.
Now, they also say if the earth is old, you can't trust the Bible. Well, I find that although the earth is old, I trust the Bible a lot. I can see that without the Bible, there'd be a lot we don't know. And we're very thankful and grateful to know what God's plan is and the ultimate fulfillment of his plan in the Son of God, who became flesh. So really, the reliability of the Bible has nothing to do with the age of the earth. Come on now. I'm getting emotional now because you're bringing it out on me with these questions.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
Point out in the book is
we're about a half hour into the program. Gene,
you just stopped on me, Mike.
I'm sorry. Little synopsis of where you were last time and where we're going now.
All right. I weave into the whole book 3 historical teachings in Christianity that help put perspective on Genesis 1. That's the nature of God, which we've already discussed. God does not have human bodily parts. He's omnipresent. He's infinite. Now, he's described that way because we don't know how else to describe God's personal qualities. So we describe them as we would understand it, but we have to know that's what's called anthropomorphizing God, making him out to be human. And as long as we know we're doing it, that's okay to do it. It's when we take it literally that's a problem. I also define the Bible's real purposes, which is to reveal God, where Jesus came to reveal the Father, didn't he? That's the next step in revealing God. And he also reveals that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, as well as being one. But that was a revelation that people still struggle with today. And then I say the mission of the church is to preach the gospel, not to do what reformists say, to reform the church and the culture with young earth creationism. That's what they say their mission is. They go on missionary trips, long stretched out missionary trips from one city to the next to talk about young earth creationism. You're supposed to preach the gospel when you go there and when you go on a missionary trip. So that really concerns me that they do that. And I go into some depth with that. The Bible makes and he was resurrected and glorified. He gets with his disciples and said, this is what I said to you, that everything must be fulfilled in the law, the prophets, and the Psalms concerning me, and that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be preached to the whole world in my name, beginning at Jerusalem. That's the gospel message to be preached, not our particular doctrinal stance, in this case, young earth creationism, or some prophetical scenario being the main thing a church pushes, not the health, wealth gospel or speaking in tongues and stuff like that. Not your sort of pet doctrinal teachings. You begin with the gospel. And then in discipleship training, you may want to train people along the lines of your teachings. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm talking about when you preach the gospel, it's not going on missionary trips talking about young earth creationism. That's not the mission of the church. It's the mission of the young earth reform movement. That's what I'm really focusing on. And the reason I take young earth creationism to task, and this is so important, is that if young earth creationism is not a clear fact and that there's serious doubts about it, there's no justification for a reform movement. That you tell people you've got to believe this or you're compromising the faith. You could say, this is what we believe. We think you're wrong, but that's it. That's all you can say. Yet they go way beyond that. And so that's why I take young earth creationism itself to task. And I spend one chapter after another going through their arguments and their presuppositions to show, I think I show clearly that it's false. Now, maybe there's some bias in me to think that. But I have to say that the people reviewing it, there's been scholars, there's been pastors and lay people. They're all saying the same thing, that it's a death blow to young earth creation zealots. I still think people can read it and take a young earth out of it or read it literally. I don't think there's anything sinful about that. That doesn't jeopardize your faith in Christ, because faith in Christ has nothing to do with that, right? Okay, so part 5 is the most important part. Part 4 is I go through the history of the reform movement. It begins with Ellen G. White, who claimed to have had a vision in the 1860s where she saw the actual creation, and God told her the days were 6 literal days, and that the reason the earth looks old is because Noah's flood changed the geological structure. And by the way, she did say that God told her all Christians should keep the Sabbath. That's how the Adventists were seeing her vision. She actually did have trances. That's pretty factual. And she would come out with a vision. And so that had to blow people's minds that later became Seventh-day Adventists. Then part 5 is the most important part. It's about the plan of God, the true gospel, the centrality of Jesus Christ. None of that, young earth creationism has nothing to do with that. The age of the earth has nothing to do with that. Neither is old earth creationism or anything else, or knowing how the universe is structured. That has nothing to do with the gospel, the personhood of Christ, the plan of God, and so on. I did mention last time about how Ken Ham did tell a young Christian woman that she couldn't have repented, who had just come to Christ, because she didn't believe that you should take Genesis literally. She wouldn't know what sin is. So she told her she didn't repent. She hadn't repented. She didn't want to admit, he writes, that without a literal Genesis, she could not answer the question, what is sin? So anyway, that's it. That's a recap. So I don't think I have to say any more. I could say a couple things, but I see at the bottom. I do have a great quote at the end. Young earth creationism can be a obstacle for faith for an unbeliever to come to Christ, because a 6,000-year-old universe is harder to believe than the existence of God.
Mm-hmm.
even people who aren't sure about the existence of God, they're pretty sure about the age of the universe not being 6,000 years old. And then there are young Earth teenagers that go into college and discover the Earth is not young, but they think the Bible tells you that's what it is, and they fall away from the faith. I'm going to end it there and take your questions up.
Okay.
Is there anything you had in mind about, is that good enough for a recap?
Yes, definitely.
More than enough, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you want to move in the remainder of today's show as to what you haven't addressed?
I thought, well, I hit the outlines. What I haven't addressed is the depth in those parts the 5 parts that I mentioned. There's a lot of depth, as you know, after reading the book, that it's very easy to get lost in that and take forever on half a chapter. You know what? My book is a comprehensive treatment so that a person who has a question, any question related, they can find it in my book and it'll be well answered. And that's the kind of tool I wanted it to be. I don't like books that don't cover everything because it just leaves so much out that people aren't going to be persuaded. And not enough people anyway. So I wanted to make it comprehensive. And I was looking forward to maybe some questions you guys might have. Like I said, I was expecting that. So if you don't have any questions, I might go back to some of these points. Do you have any questions that has been on your mind? Like last time, Mike, you said you didn't necessarily agree with everything, and I really liked what you said there. You said, but I wrote a lot of things you did like, and that you found them very helpful, interesting, and thought-provoking, and that's a good thing to rethink some of the things that we believe, and so I thought maybe if you had something along those lines, not necessarily what you disagree with, but what did you think was the most effective point I made? I would like to hear from you. I've been talking so much that was there anything that struck you about the book and you said, hey, that's something I never really thought of before? That might be true, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was the comprehensiveness, Gene. Just like you're saying, you were looking at the totality of this particular subject rather than just one particular pathway, as some books do. One thing that caught my attention was the tree ring discussion that you got into a little bit in there. And again, it's one of these many things that when you think about it, you gotta ask yourself, well, wait a minute, how do you get around the age within certain trees because of tree ring and what we understand about it? That's just one little nugget that popped out for me. But do you want to address that a little bit amongst the other little pieces of evidence? Natural.
Yeah, there's a section. Yeah. By the way, you're breaking up again. So when you stop, I think you're done, and that's why I'm interrupting you. But there is a section about dating trees dating well beyond 6,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main things is that they found dead trees that died like 6,000 years ago. And they're long trees, and the tree rings there go back 6,000 years past the year they died, 12,000 years earlier. Mm-hmm. And the new trees that sprout up, they can line up the tree rings that are the new 6,000 years and discover that there's another 6,000 years of tree rings on top of that with the dead tree lined up with the new tree. In fact, I didn't write this down. I should have, but they did discover a tree recently that they've dated to about 9,000 or 10,000 years, the actual tree. So the more science discovers, the more obvious it's going to be that no, the universe is not 6,000 years old. At any rate, you're still, if you want to believe the scripture says that, fine, but it doesn't justify a reform movement where what else they do is they persecute Christian leaders and scholars that don't agree with them, and they try to get them canceled, and they have gotten some canceled, some beloved scholars. Now, thankfully, most of them are picked up by other institutions or groups to give them work. But I don't think Christians should be doing that with a very unlikely doctrine that they're free to believe if they want, but I don't think it justifies a reform movement where they persecute others. I think this is a real problem in the church, by the way. I've heard from people who have read my book. I heard from a particular scholar who I don't know personally, but he's a well-respected one, and how concerned he is about what's going on there. Because the gospel seems to be put in the back burner. That's not a good thing. Takes people's minds off of Christ, who he is, what he did, and what it means for us in the world, and puts it on something fairly trivial, the age of the earth. I do also mention that young earth creationists don't want to say, well, it's just about the age of the earth. They don't like that. They want to say it's about biblical authority. The Bible says it, and you're not submitting to the authority. Okay. Ham says this is a biblical authority ministry. Well, any doctrine you have, you can call it a biblical authority ministry. It's a Matthew 25 ministry is a biblical authority ministry. The Jehovah's Witnesses, we're biblical authority witnesses. You can throw that around all you want, but we want to come down to what is it that you're saying? And biblical authority tends to be the age of the earth and how they interpret Genesis. That's the extent of their authority that they're applying here.
Do you know if their numbers are growing, Gene? Do you know anything about numbers?
I think they are growing. By the way, I can't see the two of you. I can only see myself.
Okay. Okay, just hang in there, Gene. We're okay with you. We're getting everything from you. So maybe the best thing to do is to continue with some of these subjects you're addressing. Did you get that last question on numbers?
I think it's growing. I think they're losing and gaining, so it's hard to know what the numbers are. But I just assume they're growing. It's really easy to convince people who don't really know the Bible that well that you gotta take it for what it says, and it's very easy to kind of describe it in a young earth way, and it's a compelling storyline. It's like most doctrines. The Bible doesn't come right out and explain things clearly, and sometimes the Bible can sound like it's contradicting itself, when it's only because some of our ideas about it are contradicting other places where it refers to a similar idea, but we misunderstood the first thing that we studied. So then you have to go back and say, okay, what have I done here that should be adjusted? So anyway, as far as the numbers are concerned, I don't really know. I don't have any in front of me, so I shouldn't address that. But my guess is, and I assume, that it's growing to some degree.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you mentioned.
I think that if you know a hunting analogy, when it talks about the death run of a deer, if you're bow hunting and you shoot an arrow through both lungs in a deer, it'll run 100 yards, but it's dead on its feet. And yet it's running full blast there for a while and then just collapses. I personally think the concept is dying. That doesn't mean it won't be around 100 years from now. It'll always be around because it's very easy to come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as growing and making a serious impact, I think that's dying more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jeff, you got a question there?
I was just going to say, you mentioned the council culture of young Earth creationist. So again, council culture is something that's happened usually from people on the left towards people on the right, or right, vice versa. But I never really thought of it as something that happens within the church. But
Yeah.
So the irony is that the Young Earth Reform movement is supposed to reform the church and the culture, but cancel culture is the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really reforming that aspect of the culture. So, and the way they debate, it's boy, they attack people personally. It's really something. And that's some of that's in my book that you probably picked up on, like with William Lane Craig and Hugh Ross is about the most unassuming guy on the planet, and they really drag him through the mud. And not that I agree with Hugh Ross. He's what's called a concordance. He reads science into the text. And he's a scientist, and he's just impressed by that. And you don't do that as a scholar. The Bible is not teaching you science. It's teaching you about God personally, and about theology and the plan of God and so on. So I don't. What I like about Hugh Ross is his understanding of astronomy. He's an astronomer. And he brings that knowledge to the existence of God and how he created things. And that's his real strength in my estimation.
Is there anything you, looking back on the book, that you would have want to have added that you didn't put in enough of?
No, I wouldn't say that. But I have come up with angles on things I did say that I thought, ooh, this would have been really effective if I had this one sentence or a paragraph.
Could you give us an example?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of what that is.
Okay.
But I have to say that I will forever be doing that no matter where I stop the book.
Sure.
That's just me. You always think of how you can improve things. And the reason it took me 6 years it's because the last 3 years I was doing that. I was refining and improving the way I was saying things. You know, if it wasn't
in your mind, what's the most compelling argument against the reform movement? Like the one or two most compelling arguments against what the reformers are saying.
Well, the reformers say things that in my mind are heretical. Those are worse than just getting the Bible wrong or just interpreting the scriptures wrong. Is when you state that the age of the earth is a foundation or foundational to God's plan. And Paul says, or is it in Acts? You can't lay any other foundation than Jesus Christ himself. That's it. That's the foundation of all things. That the cosmology of a Christian, the origins of the creation, is in John 1 for Christianity. The Genesis story is for the Old Covenant Israel's understanding of their world and how God created it. That's beautiful in its context. But in the New Testament, we have, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's revelation of the highest order. And all things were created by him and for him and through him. There wasn't anything made that was not made by him. That he is the light of the world. And men love darkness. That means is he's enlightenment himself. He's the light, the way, the truth, and the light. And men love darkness. What does that mean? They like less enlightenment. Christ is just too bright. It's kind of like Plato in his cave, if you know that analogy.
Mhm.
People lived in the cave. Once they went outside and discovered, hey, there's a whole world out. It was so bright, they went back in. It's just too much. Christ kind of did something like that to the Jewish community when he showed up. It was too much for them, or for most of them, not all of them. The early church was Jewish almost completely. Cornelius was the first Gentile we know of that came into the church. So anyway, I lost track of your question, but you're asking me what are some of the most important things in my book.
Compelling arguments against the reformed movement, and you did hit. That's a major one. What you just stated. Is there another one secondary?
There certainly are, and I'm not sure there aren't some even more important. I will repeat that the most important part to me is not arguing against young earth creationism. It's part 5, where it talks about the gospel, it talks about the plan of God, and it talks about the centrality of Christ. And it has nothing to do with the age of the earth.
Okay.
So why are you going around preaching it in missionary trips?
Okay.
By not putting the gospel first, you have what I think is heresy. Now, I don't think it's heresy if you misunderstand Genesis 1 and you happen to believe it's literal.
Yeah.
That's not heresy. That's an interpretation that's at least within the realm of possibility. It's not in the realm of probability, I don't think, but possibility, yeah, sure, who knows? But these things regarding the gospel, that the age of the earth is a gospel, it's gospel authority, it's indirectly a salvation question. Those are not healthy things to say and for people to hear and to believe in with a fervency. You know, one of the persons that were instrumental in defining inerrancy, Norman Geisler, he was one of the framers of the Chicago Statement on Inerrancy. It was a think tank of evangelical scholars and Protestant scholars to define that the Bible is inerrant. And it was brought up in their discussions whether young earth creationism should be a part of it, and they rejected it outright. Not that some of them didn't accept it. Some of them, I think, may have accepted it. But it had nothing to do with biblical inerrancy. It has to do with biblical interpretation. And there's a wide range of interpretations, as you got from the book, Mike, in Genesis 1, because there's so much obscure language from an obscure culture with an obscure set of idioms and such that we're not that familiar with. I mentioned all the sevens that are in Genesis. There are 777, not 777 sevens, but all the main nouns in verse 1, God, heaven, and earth. Each letter in the Hebrew alphabet represents a number. If you add them all up, it's 777 in the first verse. That's not a stale academic history. That's an amazingly stylistic attempt at describing the creation account, giving it a majestic feel and an awesomeness, always pointing to the covenant deity Yahweh. Number 7 does that. And so you got to put God first. The nature of God cannot be compromised. This is one of my main points. You can't compromise the nature of God so that your doctrine is fit in there. God is not a man. He's not even like a man. The Bible says, does God say things and not follow through with it? Does he say things and doesn't know that he said them? No, he will predict the future in the present. Human beings aren't anything like that. He transcends the universe. He's not a part of the universe. He came from outside and created all of it inside. So he's not governed by anything on the inside.
Yeah, I think it's
time, space, matter, and energy are created things in the universe, which means God transcends time, he's eternal. He transcends space, he's omnipresent. He transcends material, he's not made of matter, and energy, physical energy.
Right.
So
yeah, so
I would say the nature of God is a key to interpreting the scriptures in general, but certainly scriptures that describe the activity of God in detail. You have to ask yourself, is this literal, or does he actually accomplish these things, but not necessarily in the way it says he accomplished them?
Gotcha.
There's no way to know how he accomplished them. We don't comprehend how. So
Yeah, that's the problem. We got to realize there's a lot we don't know. We can't know. You know?
Right.
Hey, you have a copy of the book right behind you.
I do.
Could you grab it and display that? Yeah. And so what we've got about 4 minutes left, Gene, and I think Jeff has your email and some information about the book if people want to get it. So I'm going to let Jeff do that. And what would you like to conclude with today, Gene?
My email address, and I don't mind hearing from people, is R as in Randy, F as in Frank, Cincinnati spelled out, @gmail.com. Book Baby has my book, and it has a lot about me and the book on their in their page regarding me. Amazon has things about the book and things about me too, right on the page that features my book. The thing about Amazon I like is they have 19 reviews. Most of them are pretty detailed, and they say a lot of the same things. Some of the same things we've been saying about the book here to verify that indeed this book does accomplish the things that we've been saying it does. Not that you're going to agree with everything, and I'm not saying you need to. I'm saying there's so much there that you can't dogmatically come down on any one thing and make it your makeshift gospel, so to speak. It's not the thing you should lead with in your evangelism. You can teach people young earth creationism, that's fine. That's not the same thing, though, as a reform movement, charging the church with compromising the faith. The faith is in Christ. What does the age of the earth have to do with that? What do you mean, the faith? They routinely say that. So anyway, I don't know if I said enough about that, but Amazon, I like what they've got about my book, and I like the reviews that they list right there. Some of them you might even recognize if you were in the old Worldwide Church of God. There's a few in there that are from the Worldwide Church of God. And there are some coming that didn't stay with the church. They went with some of the factions that are going to review the book. They've read it, and they're going to review the book. So there'll be people who are not theologically the same as where I'm coming from on other matters. But they are, generally speaking, in agreement with the book. So at any rate, that's there. You know, I wish I had a website, but my publisher doesn't produce a website for its authors, which is too bad. But the promotional company that I'll be working with is going to make they already are working on a very fine website.
Very good.
Do you have that? Do you have his email?
I can put it up later in post-production.
Okay, got it. So we'll get that up, Gene.
I really appreciate that, you guys. This has been a lot of fun for me. You guys are great guys.
I got some more questions, I guess, but we're running out of time.
Well, we'll have to do a number 3 then.
Yeah, because I'll write them down. Like one I have, maybe you can put this in the last few minutes. Is we looked at the cosmology, the ancient Hebrew cosmology. Now at the time of Christ, you mentioned we have the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. What was the cosmological ideas of those?
That's a great question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Now the Apostle Paul seems to describe a 3-tiered universe, but I personally think that he's just repeating an idiom that has been part of the everyday language. Like we talk about the going down of the sun and the coming up of the sun. When the sun doesn't move, it's just right there.
Yeah.
Because by that time, there was an understanding, at least in the Greek world, that the earth was a globe. I would be surprised if Paul didn't know that.
Okay.
So despite the fact that that some of his verses seem to describe a three-tiered. What that tells me is that it was a three-tiered universe for a long time, because the idiom is still there in Paul's day. But I personally, this is my opinion, I don't think he believed in a three-tiered universe at that point.
Yeah.
Although parts of Revelation talks about the four winds of the earth, north, south, east, and west. That's kind of a three-tiered idea too. But again, that might just be idiom in describing the surface of the earth. Because we still have tons of idiom today that aren't true,
right?
That make the earth the center of the universe.
Okay.
Like the moon comes out at night. It doesn't come out at night. It's just there.
What I think we'll do, Gene,
days get shorter in the winter. No, they don't. They're exactly the same length.
Right. Gene, what I think we'll do is, once you get that website set up, what we'll do, we'll have another program with specific questions on this subject maybe we can deal with. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We'll bring our questions.
But we'll definitely
do a Tuesday too, where it's
okay.
Where it's
Yeah,
live.
we can get.
I don't know if you want to do that or not.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I won't mind doing that.
So what we'll do, let's wait until the whole website is set up. That way we'll be able to promote that. And Jeff will put the info onto this particular program. Okay.
Yes.
I would love to see your program expand into many more viewers, because you're just a great personality group. You handle things well. You've got a good disposition. I enjoy talking to you guys.
Well,
I really do.
We enjoy talking to you. You make it easy.
I'm just glad you're not still in the CIA. That was a concern. If you disagree with something, I don't know.
I'm done with that.
That's impressive. I had a friend, a colleague that worked for the CIA in China to teach financial subjects. And he was a partner of mine for a while when I was in financial services. So there's a lot the CIA does that people don't know about.
Right, exactly. And so
you can't tell us, can you, Mike? So, hey, Gene, is there anything you want to leave us with this when we end this program? Any thought or idea?
Just thank you. Just many thanks. This has been very enjoyable, and it makes me too focus on. There's another man who's reading my book and wants to put me on his podcast. I don't know if he's seen yours or not, but he's in the middle of reading the book right now. We'll see if he calls me and sets it up. He says he's going to.
Okay.
And when my book is promoted more, I can see myself doing more of these. And this was a great start for this. I had never done a thing where a Skype or anything like that before until now.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you chose us the first one to do that with then.
Yeah.
We got you some practice in.
Absolutely. It was better than practice. It was good.
Hey, thank you, Gene. I really appreciate you today and some of the things you discussed. It goes by so quickly. I wish we had some more time, but we'll get with you again soon. So we'll say goodbye to everybody.
If it goes by quickly. Bye-bye.
Yeah. We'll say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see everybody next time on Prove All Things. Right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.